legitimate, but it's going to have to be a high tax. I mean, can you imagine a 10% sales tax in the United States? I mean, certain areas have a state sales tax, and New York, communist New York, they have a city sales tax. Okay, you can't get around bankruptcy. There's no solution to the U.S. government debt. So claiming that we can get rid of the federal income tax with the national sales tax is not going to be a solution. We have to reduce the size of government, reduce the budget, stop the endless war, and get going with a gold-backed currency, because the tariffs, they're just ridiculously stupid.
President Trump mentioned the idea of Canada being the 51st state. Canada has 10 provinces, 3 territories. That would be an additional 13 states. What are your thoughts on pro and con?
I don't like the idea. Canada is run by the Communist China group, and the United States is run by the Communist China group and the Geneva fascist narcos. So that's a marriage made in hell. I don't think 3 territories will become 3 states. You can't have a representative for a territory that might have only about 10,000 people. I mean, like the Northwest Territories and the Yukon Territories, and I don't know what the third one is.
None of it.
Pardon me?
None of it. That's what it's called.
Okay.
That's what it's called.
Okay. Well, I don't think they have sufficient population to have representation with senators. I hate the idea. I think it's really a bad idea. I'd like to see Canada clean itself up and the United States clean itself up. Canada has a tougher job, I believe, a much tougher job. I don't want to get into why I think it's a much tougher job. It's just, I think it's much more difficult for Canada to remove the Chinese influence because, for among other things, Canada owns the tar sands in the West, and they own a lot of mining properties in the West of Canada. Here's what I think should be done, and I doubt will be done. The United States, state by state, should run a referendum for whether the citizens want it. And I think it would be overwhelmingly rejected. Even the border states like Minnesota, Michigan, Maine, I think they would reject it. New York might accept it because they're lunatic communists. Also, I believe that if such a step is considered, there should be a constitutional Congress in the capital of the U.S. in order to consider it. But again, there was a short version of Donald Trump who met the criminal Queen Trudeau in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, and I'm pretty sure it was not the real Donald Trump. So this version of Donald Trump recommended that Trudeau, the Queen, Trudy, be the governor of Canada, and I think he's not even qualified to be dog catcher or garbage can collector. And you guys need to get your Royal Canadian Mounted Police in order so that you can exercise arrests, starting with Freeland and Singh in the Parliament. Get the evidence, get the press on your side, show the corruption of Trudeau. And I don't like the idea. I don't think there's been any formal process for this, and therefore I don't think it was Donald Trump who recommended it. Donald Trump is a procedure guy. There's no procedure behind what I heard. Terrible idea.
Which Trudeau was at the Mar-a-Lago meeting with President Trump?
I'm not sure which Trudeau was there, but I don't think it was the actual Donald Trump either. So it might have been a fake Trudeau and a fake Trump to try to get a concept floated and get the people upset and angry. I don't know. We're going to find out maybe in the coming weeks. But I think we have a couple of shockers coming up, especially like emergency broadcasts. I think we're actually getting kind of close to that, and there are going to be a lot of revelations. And one of them could be, hey, look, Donald Trump is too valuable to put him out there in the line of fire. He's in Cheyenne Mountain, guys. What part of this do you not understand? He's in Cheyenne Mountain, guys. What part of this do you not understand? In the Republican convention in Milwaukee, there was a guy who hugged and embraced and stood next to and held the hands up next to J.D. Vance, who's 5'9", and they were almost the same height. Trump is 6'3". I keep saying that. Therefore, he's 6 inches taller than Vance, and that was not evident even at the convention. So I think we're being played. I think for high security reasons, Trump is in Cheyenne Mountain, and he's probably laughing his ass off at how people are calling him Trump out there. They got the hair right, but, when you see a Donald Trump in public, and he looks fresh, and he looks closer to 65 than he does 80, and he doesn't have any wrinkles in his face, that ain't Trump.
Doubles and clones, what's the latest?
Lots of them. Lots of doubles, lots of clones. And the clone technology is gradually getting out there, even for the sleepiest and dumbest and least educated Americans and Canadians. My line of criticism is, well, why should I value your opinion on clones when you haven't kept up with technology for the last half century? I've said that to some family members. The clone technology was revealed with that, what was it, a sheep? I think it was a sheep in the 1990s. And they announced that they did a clone of a sheep. Oh my gosh. That's when they were announcing that they have clones for humans, but they didn't want to say so, so they changed the word human to sheep. That's how long we've had clones. 30 years. There's 7 clone centers on the globe, and I hear 5 of them are in Europe. I think 2 of them are in Switzerland. There are lots of doubles, there are lots of clones, and here's how some of the action might have been playing out and still playing out. A bad actor in the deep state, maybe a congressman or a woman, is taken out and replaced with a clone, and it looks just like it. And, when you're on the congressional floor, they tend not to pull their pants down to see if you got genitalia. They tend not to do that. So it's a nice forum to maintain a clone and that secret that it's a clone. But the clone could be controlled by the black hats, or the clone could be controlled by the white hats. I hear that there are more clone facilities run by the black hats than the white hats. So that stands to reason that there are a majority of bad actors' clones. Like for instance, what's his face? Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. It is now being reported in certain circles, and you can, add your own subjectivity to how reliable those circles are. But we are now on version 4 of Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. Here's what I think is going to happen, Jim, and I've given this a lot of thought because I've been aware of clones now for several years. Bill Gates, I believe, was killed and trampled and beaten to death in India about 7 years ago by angry parents whose kids were killed by the Gates Foundation polio vaccine. There were 500,000 Indians killed. 500,000. And the angriest showed up at a stage, and they stormed the stage, and this was not in the Western news, but it was in the Indian news. And I got some contacts who are Indian and who have in-laws who are Indian. Indian with the red dot, not the feather. All right. Then there are reports that Bill Gates was executed for crimes against humanity by a Guantanamo or other tribunal related to the U.S. military. So that's 2 deaths. I personally have in my collection 3 versions of Bill Gates, and they do not look exactly alike. They look like maybe brothers, similar enough to be considered Bill Gates to an undiscerning, semi-dull person. When I see Bill Gates, I immediately wonder, gee, I don't think that's quite the same fellow that we had way back in Microsoft days, even aging. Not quite the same guy. In my 3 pictures, I point out that the mouth structure, the mouth, is different in all 3 versions. The original guy actually had a nice smile. Regardless of how evil he was, he had a nice smile. The original Bill Gates. The second Bill Gates had a different mouth and not the same teeth. His smile and teeth were different. The third one has what I call a curved mouth and no teeth evident in his smile, and you might say chicken lips. Chicken lips and no teeth showing in his smile. Okay, there's 3 different versions of Bill Gates. What I think is going to happen, Jim, is that we're going to put down another Bill Gates, and then later we're going to put down another Bill Gates, and then the talk is going to be, holy shit, we're up to 7 Bill Gateses now. There must be clone technology. That's the evidence.
Doesn't look like the swamp is going to get drained.
Yeah, but it's so big, and it's got so many creatures in it that it's going to take a while. And I'm reading articles that are very positive that the swamp is vacating. The creatures in the swamp are vacating their own swamp. The pedos are vacating the United States. I'd like to know where they're going. I think a lot of them are going to Patagonia in Argentina, but I still maintain that a number of them are going into the safest parts of Israel and to Paraguay. Paraguay is rather calm, and it's a beautiful country. My brother visited Paraguay and Argentina and Uruguay, and he said, Jim, I got to tell you, Paraguay was breathtaking beautiful. I can see why the Nazis liked it. The drain is going to take a long time. Trump thinks that he can identify the swamp creatures in the deep state. A lot of people don't know what the deep state is. They're career employees in the Department of State. They're below the Undersecretary of State. So there's a new Secretary of State. She assigns a new Undersecretary of State, and almost everybody below that is the same person. And the deep state will say to the new Secretary of State, stick it up your ass. We're not doing what you want us to do. We work for Obama. That is the risk. And it's the State Department, it's the Treasury Department, it's National Security, it's the Department of Interior, it's Health and Human Services. They all have mid-level career employees, and that is why I think Trump says, I want to reduce the government, not just to cut back on the employee salaries and costs, but to get rid of the deep state. Sorry, we're eliminating your department. You got 25 people. We're going to keep it at 2, and we're going to keep the 2 that we like and get rid of everybody else. And you're going to have lawsuits and civil service claims for violations, and it's going to be a big, big battle, and it's going to be fun to watch. But Elon and Vivek are going to be in focus, and on the health and medical side, Robert Kennedy is going to be in focus. By that I mean a target on their back, by the Rockefellers, by the Warriors, and by the Langley Narcos. I think, Jim, by the time we get to the end of Trump's second term, we get into 2028, it's going to be quite clear that progress has been made, but there's still more to do. Let's change that date. By the time we get to the end of 2026 with midterm elections, we're probably going to have a conclusion that progress has been made, but there's more to do in draining the swamp, because some of the swamp creatures have hidden their identity. Some of the swamp creatures will placate Trump and not be loyal to him. It's going to be very complicated and difficult.
Could President Biden's pardon of his son Hunter backfire on him?
It already has. I think the pardon is actually nails in the coffin for the Democratic Party. That's how serious I think this is. The bias in the press, the mail-in fraud votes, they all worked to undermine the Democratic Party. And now you're seeing the Democratic Party fundraisers and high-level officials coming forth saying that their internal polls had Kamala Harris 20 and 30% behind, which means they were actively promoting falsified polls done by the press networks and the printed press, like New York Times rag and Washington Post rag and Los Angeles Times rag. So these press networks and the media are in danger now of going down with the Democrat Party and dragging down the Democrat Party. I believe the pardon, it's not just the pardon of Hunter. He's done preemptive pardons, or the puppet claiming to be Biden. It's not Biden. Biden's long gone. Got to wake up. The pardons given, let's use passive voice there, the pardons given are for all kinds of people. It's for Liz Cheney. It's for Fauci. It's for Hunter. It's for all kinds of people, even people who have not been prosecuted. You cannot give a pardon to someone who's not been convicted. So that's how absurd it's become. And now the Democratic Party is going to be the laughing stock for the country in political terms for the next 2 years. We might see something, Jim, by midterm elections, November 26th. We might see the Congress, which means the House of Representatives and the Senate. We might see it 2/3, 3/4 Republican or more from the wreckage and destruction and dishonor of the Democratic Party. And if they're ever caught with evidence with the Democratic National Committee associated with Clinton murders, the party might get shut down.
We'll have more with Jim Willie right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
You're listening to goldradio.fm. Available online at HowStreet.com, TalkDigitalNetwork.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jim Willie. Jim, are we living through an extinction event?
I'm afraid to say yes. I believe, and I just don't want to get into warp speed in the entire issue of hastening the introduction and rollout of vaccines, but I do believe that if Hillary had won in 2016, we would have been in a much worse situation by the time the Biden stolen election took place. We're going to see a lot more dead people from the vaccine. I lost my favorite college roommate. I had three, Bruce, and Rick. Bruce, and Rick. My New York Bruce is dead. My Ohio Bruce he's a bit of a lame brain. He buys all the Iraqi terrorists and jihad bullshit, and we've had problems. But my other roommate, Rick, he just stuck with alcoholism, and we've drifted apart. So I don't have any really close college roommates, but I do have a roommate of a roommate, a guy in Ohio, Northeast Ohio, and he's very, very solid guy, and I visited him a number of times back in 04, 05, and 06. But this is an extinction attempt, and there are a number of really smart people, including Edward Dowd, and they believe that in the next 2 years we're likely to see another wave of deaths from cancer, heart attacks, and just a widespread assortment of diseases because the vaccinated have AIDS. They have wrecked immune systems. This is tragic. I believe the estimates now in the United States are about 6 million who are dead from the vaccine, and 4 to 5 times, so like 20,000, 25,000 who are very seriously injured. I'm sorry, 25 million who are very seriously injured. 6 million dead, up to 25 million injured, and those injured are at risk of dying. They're the first ones in line with big risk. I mean, if they're injured, they're at risk of dying. If they're not injured, then they've got to go through the entire pathogenesis of being injured. So we've got a potential for 30 million. 30 million out of 330. That's 1 in 11. Now, that's not an extinction, but it's a very large percent of our population, enough to affect the economy, the labor market, the housing market, just about every market. So, yeah, it's an attempt at an extinction event, and it leads me to a forecast that I have that Donald Trump is going to punt. He is not going to pursue Nuremberg trials in 2025. He's going to delay because of threats to his life by the Rockefeller Hive, the Rockefeller Institute, and the FDA hitmen. FDA has murderers for hire. Murderers for hire. We need to get past the naivete. We have to wake up. The FBI, Big Pharma, and FDA have murdering hitmen. I got a quick story to tell you. It was 2014. I got contacted by a friend of mine, an American living in Panama. He said, Jim, remember I spoke about my sister? She works in Miami area. Well, her boss was murdered, and they work at a clinical laboratory, and he submitted a paper to reveal the contents, including nagalese, in all the vaccines. And this was way before the mRNA COVID fake virus vaccine. It was the standard vaccine that's produced 1.3% autism in the United States without an uproar. And I asked him more questions, and he said there were 5 murders. My sister's boss and 4 others all murdered, and they had a few things in common. They all got visited by the FBI. The FBI wanted them to hold back on publishing their report, identifying nagalese, which is an immune system suppressant. They wanted them to not appear in Switzerland for a conference. And then the other thing they had in common was the FDA visited them with what looked to be armed officers. And the other thing they had in common was they were all murdered by a shotgun and their bodies dumped in the Okefenokee swamps north of Miami. Okay, this is hitman. Hitman with the FBI, hitman with the FDA, hitman with Big Pharma. They were going to expose Big Pharma and the actual chemical and molecule with identification of its makeup, nagalese, to suppress the human immune system and make a good Big Pharma client for life. Okay, they have murderers. Okay, this is an extinction event. And what Donald Trump is trying to do is make extinct the swamp creatures, and they're going to fight back.
How many people do you think really have been Vaxxecuted so far?
I think it's about 6 million dead, up to 25 million seriously injured, and could be candidates for a death in the next couple of years. And what I learned ever since I was a kid is whatever numbers you have for the United States, divide by 10, and that applies to Canada. So they might have about 600,000 dead in Canada and another 2.5 million seriously injured. But I believe in Canada it was a little more strict in enforcing the health mandate. I love that, health mandate. Yeah, execution order. You want your job, you want to keep it, where you got to take a roulette to kill yourself.
Comedian Ron White says you can't fix stupid. What makes people stupid?
I've given this a lot of thought, Jim. It's a number of things. I think video games make people stupid. Video games. I'm very serious with that. Video games. They could be reading a book, reading a novel. They could be solving puzzles. They could be doing math problems. But instead they're doing something stupid like having a creature jump over obstacles and collect balls. Adults playing video games so they don't become adults mentally. I do believe that a rather significant slice of humans are born stupid. They're not given an adequate potential for their cerebrum. Their cerebral cortex doesn't have a great potential for development. Another factor is there was a group, I can't think of their name, Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd has a video, and it was very, very popular. We don't want your education. Bum, 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 bum. We don't want your education. Why? I was held back by my education. James, will you sit still? I'm sorry, sister, but I'm bored. Sit still or you'll have detention. So what is education in that 6th grade environment? It's conformity. Sit down, shut up. If you're bored, sit down, shut up. If you find everything easy and you're not challenged, sit down, shut up. Okay, education is designed to meet the needs of the average. And what I like is something I saw about 30 years ago, open classroom. I think it's a great idea. Open classroom. You don't have all the students lined up like soldiers sitting in fixed formation in alphabetical order where they're told to sit down and shut up. So education is part of the problem. Vaccination is part of the problem. Fluoriding water is part of the problem. There are a lot of parts of the problem. Incompetent parents is a problem. I'll give you an example of an incompetent parent. Okay, Johnny or, Susie, take your pick. They were playing and they kept breaking something because they were careless and they were ignoring. Okay, no television for you. Your favorite show, not tonight. And you're not going to go to camp. You're not going to go to camp because you broke something in the backyard. Okay, illogic in punishment. I'll give you an example of illogical punishment. Johnny or Susie snitched a couple of cookies over the refrigerator using a chair. And they did so at 3 p.m. And the parent caught them. So the punishment was no cookies after dinner. Logical. If you make it illogical, you teach the child vengeance. You don't teach them logic, and you don't teach them to think. You teach them to attack. And it's really quite unfortunate to watch. I had a very badly raised friend named Jeffrey when I was a kid, and I knew he was badly raised, but he was my friend, and when you have a friend, you want the best, you want to think the best, you want to expect that the next year the guy's going to be, a little bit better and betray you less and things like that, not steal your lunch money when you're not looking, stuff like that. But I found Jeff Kelly, he was swinging cats against plywood with nails coming out of it, 16-penny nail. And he said, Jim, you want to do this? It's really fun. I said, you're sick. What is wrong with you? I never spoke to him again. Badly raised. I saw his father, and he was incompetent. So it's a lot of things. Video games, badly raised, bad education system, fluoride to keep your brain, calcified or whatever it is, calcification of the pineal gland. The cabal doesn't want us to be healthy. They want us to be good clients for their medical and pharmaceutical products. They don't want us to be smart to organize and rebel. They want us to be dumb and compliant animals. And that's why they don't like me. That's why they don't like you and many of your listeners, because they're smart. And the smartest are called conspiracy nuts, and we're called that by some of the dumbest people in the room.
Jim, how can our listeners subscribe to the Hat Trick Letter?
It's golden-jackass.com. I'm in my 21st year. I got a great website manager. He's been with me now for 5 full years. He's a great guy. He's from Holland. He's bilingual. We've also got consult calls. I've got 3 or 4 to do right now, so I arrange them. And I just, if someone signs up and it's time to try to execute it, I say, pick a time in the next 2 or 3 days. And sometimes they're very prompt in answering. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they say next week looks better. So that's the way we work the consult calls. And Jim, I've done almost 800 of them now. 5 full years, 800. It's a lot. I enjoy it. It's a lot. I do about 2 or 3 a week. When I really get going, I sometimes do 6 or 7 in a week. But, when it gets intense for producing the Hat Trick Letter, the newsletter, I pull back a little bit and say, I'll catch you next week. And that's why I end up doing 2 or 3 or 4 in a single week. There's also a donate button. And honestly, there are a lot of really fine people who don't want the newsletter. They want to support me, and they want to just catch the interviews like this. And they go from one to the next and miss maybe a couple, and they find another. They have their favorite hosts. And they write to me and say, how can I support you? I say, hit the donate button. And they do so, and I see the result of their donation, and it's a wonderful thing. I've got a small group, and it's always a wish that it'd be much, much bigger, but there's a sponsor button, and that's for a 4-figure donation. I call them sponsors because they're sponsoring a mission. My mission is for the truth and to promote liberty and to eliminate corruption and Satanism. And that's why I get harmed. Those people who don't understand Satanism, there's a lot you're not aware of. Don't dismiss deep, dark, powerful forces just because you don't understand it. Let me give you another example of something that people don't understand, and therefore they should not dismiss. They should not dismiss integral calculus. They should not dismiss Fourier analysis. They should not dismiss nuclear energy. They don't understand it, but they cannot say, they should not say it doesn't exist. Satanic forces are real. The fact that people don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means they don't understand it, they haven't studied it, they haven't experienced it, they haven't suffered from it. And I have. And it's been 8 years now. 8 years. And it's been painful. I'm tired. I'm tired of being harmed. So anyway, the website has a flagship newsletter. I offer consult calls. You can make donations, and if you wish, you can become a sponsor. Some of my sponsors are regular, large donators, and it's a wonderful thing to see. And honestly, for the last 2 years, I've been falling to my knees, thanking the Lord God, Jesus, for the sponsor donation. That's how important it is for my own survival. I have had unspeakable losses, and I've had several miracles where I needed to come up with money for an extortion or a big medical bill or something, and suddenly I had a large donation of equal size. This has happened about 5 or 7 times, and that's just wonderful to see. I just had a donation for XRP. The guy said, I want to keep supporting you, Jim. As you know, XRP is way up. I think it's going to go up a lot higher. I said, okay, just send me the Bitcoin, and I'll transfer it to XRP. He said, okay, great. And it was done in 6 hours. Okay, I've got a lot of wonderful clients. Many of them are Christian. Some of them are truth warriors, as I call them. They're not necessarily religious, but they believe in supporting the truth and promoting the truth and getting it out there. So that's what the newsletter is all about. It's about honest money, preserving your life savings, staying safe from a fake virus, a fake pandemic, and a deadly vaccine, the double X. And someone pointed out to me, Jim, all vaccines are harmful. Yeah, I realize that. But the mRNA vaccine has produced turbo cancer and accelerated AIDS and shingles in a way that the standard vaccine doesn't. The standard vaccine debilitates, like the one that we've had for 40 years. It debilitates the immune system, and with all the different adjuvants and, contaminants, has produced autism. I have one colleague with an autistic child. It's all avoidable. They're ramping up the contaminants in standard vaccines. So if you're an idiot and you think it's necessary to get a flu shot every year, you're probably committing suicide. Let that sink in.
Jim, thank you so much for being